Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about one of the most shocking developments in global affairs. Reports that Israel has carried out direct strikes on Tehran, followed by a bold warning from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu aimed squarely at Iran's leadership. This is an escalation unlike any seen in recent years, one that could reshape the political and military landscape of the Middle East. Let's unpack exactly what has happened, why it matters, and what it could mean for the future. Tensions between Israel and Iran have been simmering for decades. Israel views Iran's nuclear ambitions as an existential threat, while Iran considers Israel a hostile power working to undermine its sovereignty and regional influence. The two countries have clashed through cyber operations, proxy conflicts, and covert missions. But this latest development crosses into new territory. Israeli forces reportedly struck key targets in and around Tehran, claiming the operation was aimed at Iran's military and nuclear infrastructure. Netanyahu later confirmed that Israel had carried out what he called a necessary and preemptive move to neutralize threats that could no longer be tolerated. In his address, he warned that any further aggression or nuclear progress by Iran would be met with even greater force. The Israeli government has described the operation as a strategic success, saying it delivered a severe blow to Iran's capabilities. Meanwhile, Iranian authorities condemned the attacks as an act of war and vowed revenge. State media in Iran reported that several facilities were damaged and that the government has placed its armed forces on high alert. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard has also promised a decisive response. This chain of events has set the stage for a dangerous cycle of retaliation, one that could spiral beyond control if either side miscalculates. The heart of this crisis lies in the question of deterrence. Israel has long followed a policy of ambiguity regarding its nuclear arsenal, but its actions now send a clear message. It will not allow Iran to develop the capacity to produce nuclear weapons. Netanyahu's direct warning, stating that Israeli jets could soon fly over the skies of Tehran, was not just symbolic. It was a statement of intent. He emphasized that Israel will strike any site tied to the Ayatollah's regime if it continues to threaten Israeli security. For Iran, this is more than a military challenge. It's a challenge to national pride and sovereignty. The strikes inside or near Tehran carry heavy symbolic weight as they hit close to the core of Iranian authority. Reports have emerged that Israel warned Tehran residents to evacuate key areas before the strikes, particularly regions that house government or military infrastructure. This move, while intended to reduce civilian casualties, also served as psychological warfare, instilling fear among civilians and signaling that nowhere is off limits. For many ordinary Iranians, this represents a terrifying new phase in their country's long struggle with outside threats. Streets in parts of Tehran reportedly emptied overnight as residents sought shelter or fled to nearby provinces. The sense of vulnerability is unprecedented. The international reaction has been mixed and cautious. Western nations, while recognizing Israel's security concerns, have urged restraint and called for de-escalation. The United States has reportedly been in contact with both sides, seeking to prevent further escalation that could destabilize the region. Meanwhile, Russia and China have condemned the strikes, accusing Israel of violating international law and pushing the Middle East toward war. The United Nations Security Council has scheduled an emergency session to discuss the situation. But as history shows, diplomacy often lags behind events in crises like this. From a military perspective, the strike demonstrates Israel's unmatched intelligence capabilities and long-range precision. But it also exposes the vulnerability of regional stability. Iran's possible responses could include direct missile attacks on Israeli territory, cyber warfare, or activating proxy groups such as Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, or militias in Iraq and Syria. Each of these options carries the risk of expanding the conflict across multiple fronts, pulling in neighboring countries and threatening international shipping lanes and energy routes. For Israel, the decision to strike Tehran wasn't taken lightly. The Israeli government has faced internal debate and global criticism over how far to push its deterrence policy. Supporters argue that inaction would have been more dangerous, allowing Iran to reach nuclear breakout capability. Critics warn that this move could ignite a war that no one can fully control. Either way, the attack signals a dramatic shift from covert operations to overt confrontation, changing the nature of Israeli-Iranian conflict permanently. On the Iranian side, leadership faces enormous pressure to respond. The population, already suffering from economic hardship and political repression, is now being told to brace for potential war. Iranian state TV has been broadcasting images of destroyed buildings and promises of revenge, rallying national sentiment. But behind the rhetoric lies a difficult reality. Iran's conventional military, while sizable, would struggle to sustain a direct conflict with Israel's technologically advanced forces. That's why Tehran is likely to use asymmetric tactics, proxy warfare, cyber attacks, and political pressure through allied nations to respond without triggering a full-scale regional war. The global economic implications of this escalation are also serious. Crude oil prices have already surged amid fears of disruption in the Strait of Hormuz, through which a significant portion of the world's oil supply passes. Financial markets are reacting to the uncertainty, and global leaders are calling for calm to prevent a wider crisis. The European Union has urged both sides to return to dialogue, warning that continued hostilities could lead to catastrophic consequences, not just for the Middle East, but for global stability. Beyond the politics and strategy, this is a deeply human tragedy waiting to unfold. Civilians on both sides are living under the shadow of fear, families in Tehran unsure if more bombs will fall, and people in Israel worried about retaliatory missile strikes. It's a reminder that behind every headline are ordinary lives disrupted by decisions made at the highest levels of power. Hospitals in both countries are on alert, and humanitarian organizations are preparing for potential emergencies if the conflict deepens. In the broader context, this event may mark the start of a new phase in global geopolitics. For years, conflicts were fought through proxies and economic sanctions, but direct strikes between major powers like Israel and Iran signal a breakdown of that balance. It reflects growing boldness among nations to act unilaterally when they feel cornered. The implications go beyond the Middle East. This will affect how countries like the US, China, Russia, and even European powers think about deterrence and preemption in their own security doctrines. The coming days will be crucial. Will Iran retaliate immediately, risking an all-out war, or will it wait and respond in ways that are harder to trace? Will Israel double down on its offensive operations, or open channels for negotiation under international pressure? The answers will determine not just the fate of these two nations, but possibly the stability of an entire region that has already endured decades of conflict. What's clear is that this moment represents a turning point. Israel has demonstrated its willingness to act unilaterally, and Iran faces a stark choice between escalation and restraint. Both sides are walking a tightrope, and the world is holding its breath. Whatever happens next, this conflict will shape the political, economic, and security dynamics of the Middle East for years to come. As we continue to watch events unfold, it's essential to remember the bigger picture. Beneath the strategies and statements are real people whose lives hang in the balance. The hope, however faint, is that diplomacy can still prevail before this confrontation turns into something far more devastating. Thank you for watching, and stay informed as we continue to follow this developing story.